on up, Lou.
Well, I had a lot of problems trying to put this together, and after the third try, I knew God did not want me to say what I was trying to say. So I just let him do it. So I want y'all to pay attention. Have you ever wondered how you got to Leesville and why? Some of you were born here. Others' careers brought them here, or their husband's career or wife's career brought them here. Did you ever think that God sent you to a certain place for a reason, or why you have lived in the same place all the time and not moved? A few days ago, my granddaughter-in-law, Brittany, said to me, she said, I always wondered why I stayed up here after the hurricane. The hurricane brought me here, but I didn't want to stay. But she said, I realized then I wouldn't have met Andrew if I didn't stay. Well, Andrew, it was a long time and a long way getting him to Leesville. So I'm not going to tell you all about that. Okay, I was born during World War II, right after the Great Depression. My grandparents, my only ones I had was on my mother's side of the family. My grandfather was a Methodist lay preacher, and he was one of those old-fashioned preachers that banged on the Bible and jumped up and down, and he had some spirit in that church, and I used to think he was the meanest person on earth. But he taught me a lot about the Bible, a whole lot. And one time I was telling Carla today, I said, Sunday was, you went to church, you came home, and if you weren't a woman, weren't big enough to work in the kitchen, then you sat and you read your Bible, or just sat there and listened to him tell you Bible stories. Because there was no working, no play on Sunday. One time I asked him why my grandmother and my mother got to go in the kitchen. He says, that's their job. So, anyway, I listened to him, and finally one day he caught me on Sunday. I was sewing. I was making a doll dress. And he called me up before him, and he preached to me, and he said, and you know the devil's going to make you pull every one of those stitches out by your toenails. Well, now I got to wonder about this, because I'm about Winter's age at that time, about 10 years old, and I just didn't really believe that was in the Bible. So I saved my allowance, and I bought me a Bible so I could read it. I didn't find it in there. So anyway, I've always had religion around me somehow. I couldn't pinpoint the day that I got saved because it's just a given. I mean, God takes care of you if you listen to him. Well, when I was about 12, I think, I started having dreams about things that were happening. The first thing that I remember dreaming of was I dreamed my grandmother was going to die. I saw her in the clouds, and I saw the date of her death on it, which is October the 13th, 1952, I believe. And I went to my mother and my daddy, and they said, oh, no, that's just nonsense. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with your grandma. Well, lo and behold, the day come, and I was always nervous and worrying about that day. She died on that day. And I've dreamed of a lot of things that was going to happen to my family, and especially I would have dreams about my father. Most recent dream that I actually had was about Natalie's birth. When she was born, the night before, Carl and I stayed in a hotel there, and I had dreamed that during the process of delivery, she stopped breathing, and but then I also saw them pick her up and get her started back breathing, but she was going to be very sick, and that was what happened with her. But I had been sitting there, and I saw the baby come out of the delivery room. The baby was fine, looked like to me, unbeknownst to, all of us, she wasn't that fine. And when Terry came and told me what had happened, well, I said, I dreamed that, but she's going to be okay. And that was God's way of letting me and us know that something was going to happen, but he was taking care of it, and she was going to be okay. Anyway, I've had a lot of dreams. I saw my husband go to Vietnam and come back disabled. We struggled a lot to get him back to normal. Until he was able to get his disability, I worked 3 jobs. God gave me the strength to do that and gave us what we needed to sustain us until he got back his health. And then when Stephen was about 15, he doesn't want me to tell this, I know, but he ran away from home. And we got a call that he was in Birmingham, Alabama. Not Birmingham. What is the town called? Montgomery, Alabama. And I was at work, and so he was at a police station there. He'd gone in, turned himself in, told him he stole my car, and he'd run away from home, and he just wanted his mom and dad to come and get him. So we decided we'd wait until I got off work and we would go. On the way up there, we took Harm's truck because Steve had taken my Buick. And on my way up there, I laid down in the seat and went to sleep. And I dreamed that Steve had the belt around his neck, that he was strangling. And I woke up. It was a start, and I told Harm, and he said, oh no. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. I talked to the policeman. They're going to let him sit there in the police station, and he's going to be fine. Well, when we got there, he wasn't there. He was in the hospital. He had somehow managed to choke himself, or somebody had choked him. We don't know exactly what happened, but he was there in the hospital near death, and God had warned me about that. During the next few days or weeks that we were up there, I continued to have a lot of dreams about things that were going to happen during the day that would happen, and it got kind of scary. I didn't want to dream. I didn't want to go to sleep. But I realize now that it was God just keeping in touch with me, letting me know that he was there with me. And then we were able to bring Steve finally. They transferred him back to Keesler Air Force Base, where he got an infection in the blood, septicemia. And this was, I think, the 3rd time that he told me that he wasn't going to make it through the night, but they told me, you need to bring your family in because this time he's not going to make it many more hours. But I couldn't get hold of anybody on the phone. That was before the days of cell phones and everything. So I couldn't even find my pastor. Now that was just horrible. I mean, he's supposed to have been there when I needed him, but he wasn't. So I went to the chapel and I started praying. And I prayed a long time and finally realized I didn't really need my pastor to pray with me. I didn't need those people to surround me. I could talk to God myself. And that was my first realization that, I had the capability of communicating with Lord without having somebody there with me. Well, Steve was quarantined in isolation with another patient suffering from septicemia. They had both been treated in the emergency room of the same hospital in Montgomery. I don't want to remember that place. And Steve lived, but unfortunately the other one didn't. I had invited her mother to come to the chapel with me, but she said, no, I'll be all right here. But later on, she died that night, but Steve got better. And we tried to get them to do an autopsy so they could see if there was anything else going on in her that could have helped him, but the parents wouldn't let them, and her husband wouldn't let him. So we didn't get that, but he began to get better. He had turned black. I mean, he had little black dots all over his body. Really weird. And he still has a few of them today. It looks like a tattoo, but it's not. But we continued. Carl and Mike moved back to Gulfport with us, and Steve went to rehabilitation for a year. He had to learn everything all over. He had to learn like a baby. He had to be potty trained. He had to learn to eat. He had to learn to dress himself. He had to learn to talk and all those things. So we were constantly in prayer for him. And of course, my husband, who was not well either. But my prayer constantly has usually been, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Well, during this time, I managed to finish college and got my master's degree through night school because I was working during the day, and I was able to get a management job, which eventually led to moving 5 times before I was sent to Fort Polk. Well, when I came here, I felt like God sent me a guardian angel and my housekeeper, because I wasn't going to church then. All the time we'd gone to the military churches usually, and I didn't feel like driving back out to Fort Polk on Sunday, so I wasn't going. And she taught me into going to a little Methodist church out in Seeper. And so I was going there, and harm continued to get worse and worse, and finally he was requiring 24/7 attention. And so I couldn't go anywhere. And without her, Linda, I don't know what I would have done. But then Carla and Mike moved back to help me with him. And then Carla and I were, I don't know if Steve was with us or not, this is how we got to this church here. We were driving out towards Seeper. All of a sudden, I pulled over and I looked at Carla and I said, we need to go to church in town. It was very, very strong feeling that I needed to come here. I had been in a couple of times and talked to Chris about some of the Bible studies and everything, but never about coming here. But it just was overpowering that I needed to come here. And so I turned the car around and called Scott and Irene, and I said, hey, we're going to church in town today. So we all came to church down here. And that was Chris's last day here. And Ken came the next Sunday. So we kind of came with him, and I think that's 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure how long. But anyway, I was glad. I know why I needed to be here. I needed to be here because I needed the church family when my husband died, and all the people, you know, to be around me. And of course, Ken saw to it that I got busy and involved in the church after his death to keep me from thinking. But I was mad. I was really mad at God. It wasn't fair. We were almost going to have our 50th anniversary, and he took him away. And it took me a long time to get over my anger. Well, at least a year and a half. I went to Cursillo, or the one in Baton Rouge, and I helped work through my anger issues with God. And shortly after, I think maybe a year after my husband's death, I had asthma really bad. And I told Faye, I think, and Elaine about this, but I had a visit from some angels, and I don't know if it was in a dream or if it was they were really there. But I was choking. I couldn't breathe. And fortunately, Winter was there with me, and she woke me up. But the angels told me that I couldn't die now because God had more work for me to do, and that he would take me when I was through. So I'm not through because I'm still here. Now, I had really fought the devil about this, speaking tonight. For 2 weeks since I told Hank I would do it. He sat up there on my shoulder and said, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. God's in here saying, you can do it, you can do it. Any and everything that could happen has happened this last couple of weeks. And lo and behold, I went in one day, I just couldn't take anymore. So I opened my Bible and let it fall open. And it fell open to my favorite book, Job. Now, there's nobody that had any more problems than Job. And Job remained faithful. So I know that I have to stay faithful in whatever comes. It's not going to be more than I can bear. But this would have been a lot longer if God hadn't kept messing up my paper. After a while, he didn't want me to tell all that stuff, so I just said, okay, God, you can talk through me. And so that's what I have. Well, there was one other incident with, I've seen a lot of miracles with prayer, and certainly miracles with Stephen when he was so ill. And for him to be able to drive and do the things he does today, that is a miracle. And miracle with Natalie. And then recently, my neighbor I asked for prayer for tonight was in the hospital in Alexandria. She had accidentally taken an overdose of pills, and she forgot what she was taking, and her kidneys had shut down, and she was unconscious. I'd been there, about a week, wasn't it, that we'd been going there every day? And one day I went in, and the nurse said, you can't come in right now. I've got to do something with her. So I said, okay. So I went back out by the door, and I started praying for her. And when the nurse told me I could come in, she sat up and said, Miss Lou, is that you? I said, yes, I've been praying for you. How are you? She said, I'm great. Can I go home now? And so I kind of felt like that was a miracle too. So don't ever quit praying, because God is there, and he listens, and he talks to you. I mean, he's told me things in dreams, but he talks to me when I talk to him. I just can't explain how it is, but it is. Okay, thank you.